going to start recording. So it's very interesting, all the different things that technology does these days. I'm, a little bit older, so learning all of these new technological, wonderful opportunities that we have is really great. So I believe that I am live on Facebook. So hi, everybody. I'm glad you're here. And I'm going to get started here in a couple minutes with a live webinar. I do have some people that have registered but can't make it. And that's fine, because if they've registered, I am going to be sending them a link so they can have the recording of the video and they can see, all the slides up close and everything else. So, which is great. And if you want that, and you're live on Facebook and would like a recording, what I'm going to ask you to do is to message me privately via Facebook, and then I can send you the link to the video. So hopefully we will get some people coming in here shortly. I'm excited to get started. So let me take a peek. Carolyn, hello. Thank you for coming on. I'm going to I'm holding off for just a few minutes till we get started. I am broadcasting live on Facebook as well. So that's kind of a new thing. So I'm curious if anybody is on Facebook Live, how it goes, or if they can see things or what that looks like. So I'm going to hold off for a little bit. We do have a few more registrants that I want to make sure get on and get started, and I'll get rolling right at noon because I want to honor your time. So I'm just kind of babbling for a few minutes before we get going and I start the webinar. So I hope everybody is having a good day. I know there's rain in some parts of the country, and here in Maine it is hot and steamy, but looks like we might be getting some rain a little bit later and cooling things down. So, and I've enjoyed the summer by the beach, I will tell you that much. So let's see. All right. Another person coming in. So hello. It's not popping up on my screen, but that's okay. I can't always see everybody that's here, which is all right. Like I said, technology is so interesting. All right, it is noontime. So welcome everybody, and thank you so much for being here. I greatly appreciate you taking some time to spend with me during this webinar. This is something that I'm very passionate about, and if you know me at all, you know that it is something that I'm very passionate about. So I'm going to share some wonderful information with you today, and I hope that it changes your perspective. The company name or the business name that I have created is called Shaping Perspectives, and the reason for that is I really want women especially, right, because I work with women, to begin to change their perspective around their body, around food, around eating, around exercise, and around their life, finding more joy in their life and really starting to create the life that they want. And it's not dictated by the size of their body. So what I'm going to do is I am going to share screen here so that you can start to see, and I'll open this up so it becomes a little bit bigger. There, okay. So we're going to get rolling here, and this is called Hop on the Dieting Bandwagon and Gain Weight. It's a very interesting title, right? Because dieting is what we've been told is the method to lose weight. And it's very interesting, when the big diet trends started in the 60s and the 70s, there was not what they call, quote unquote, the obesity epidemic that there is today. But it's interesting, as diets have increased in culture, so have weights. So it's an interesting paradox that those two things have increased at the same time. So I want you to keep that in mind as we go forward here. We're going to start off with the scale, because the scale can be one of the biggest deteriorants from going with your goals, because stepping on the scale creates feelings for some of us. And before I kind of move into this, I want to share that if stepping on a scale for you, you just step on a scale and it doesn't, it's just a number and there's no feelings attached for it or thoughts attached to it, that's fine. But if you step on the scale, right, and there are either one of these two faces, right, when you step on the scale. So we're going to kind of talk about these two reactions that happen when we step on a scale and we see a number. My hope is that at the end of this, you'll get rid of your scale. So if you have one, you'll go out in your driveway or throw it out your window or throw it in the trash or run over it with your car or whatever. So I want you to think about what it feels like when you step on a scale and you see a number that makes you smile, right? On the left side of the screen. So I'm a happy person. So there's something that I must be doing that is creating this smile on my face. On the other side, we can step on a scale and we can look like this, like, ugh, no, not again. So what I want to share here is a little bit of what else is going on, right? So this thought on the left, this happy thought, ooh, yay, yay, I can reward myself. What shall I eat? One thought, right? I must be doing something right. That's awesome. Ooh, let's go celebrate. And then there's this move or this desire to eat. The other thing that happens on this left side is, oh my goodness, whatever I'm doing is working. So I'm going to continue to restrict. So there's two kind of things that come from this thought when we step on a scale. Either eat, reward, or don't eat, restrict. Go right to the other side, right side of the screen, okay? So as we look at the right side of the screen, I want you to think about this for a second. Sad, shit. Ooh, I just said that on live, sorry. That is, that's it, I'm done. I'm gonna start my diet tomorrow, right? Which means restrict, not eat. Or it doesn't matter, nothing matters. I am gonna, whatever I do doesn't matter. So I might as well eat. So both sides of this, happy, sad, what the outcome is the same, eat, not eat. So this is just kind of this entry point to how we're gonna be talking about this today. So a little bit about my story when it comes to this. I was told at 10 years old, some of you know my story, so you'll hear a little bit. I'm not going to share a whole lot. At 10 years old, the doctor told my mom that she better watch what I ate. So I was basically grew up in a restrictive household and have been off and on diets my whole life. I ended up with anorexia nervosa. I have had a stint of bulimia. Exercise-induced bulimia, so overexercise, and also binge eating. So I've kind of run that whole gamut of eating disorders. And then I was in fitness. So on top of it, I saw client after client after client trying to help them with their bodies, in the meantime struggling while I was in my own personal life. So going into exercise and fitness actually was feeding my disorder, so to speak, until about 5 or 6 years ago. And that's when I just tired. I was tired of the roller coaster. I was tired of the treadmill. I just didn't want to do it anymore. And this is where I started to dig in and do some work on myself. And this is why you see this list of things. I became a life coach to understand that it is not all about fitness and eating. There's so much more to it. I went back to school to become an eating disorder specialist and an intuitive eating coach. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit. Instead of calling myself a fitness professional, which I was for over 30 years, I call myself a movement and play coach. I've disconnected exercise from weight and calories and body. And I've also done a lot of research with self-care and body image, and self-talk. So that's kind of just a little bit about me. So I'm going to start moving in to our webinar a little bit more deeply. So 95% of diets fail. It is not you that fails. It is your body's physiology. And we're going to go right into what actually happens when you move into restriction and what that entails. And something that I want you to consider as you're watching this webinar is, how many diets or restricted periods of time have you had in your past? Because all of the things that I talk about today are actually compounded if you have an extensive diet history. So for somebody like myself, I have an extensive diet history. So I've been on multiple diets, multiple restriction. So this, what I'm going to share with you today, is really what saved my life when it comes to finding developing a different relationship with food. So 95% of diets fail. 91% of women are unhappy with their bodies. And you can take a look at what goes on in the media and all around us. 81%, this is an amazing stat, 81% of 10-year-olds are afraid of being fat. 81%, 10-year-olds are in 4th grade. It's really sad. And if you're a mom or a grandmom, right, we're the role models. And so if our children are watching us diet or beat ourselves up about our bodies, that's what they learn. And that's why this is so important for all ages, so that we can start to nip this in the bud. And then the diet industry itself, $60 billion a year diet. It's crazy. And it gets me all fired up. So let's talk about why. Why do 95% of diets fail? Here are a few different things. These are some things that happen to our body during restriction, and I'm going to go a little bit deeper as we move forward. Our body's metabolism drops. You've probably heard that before. The metabolism slows down. When the body doesn't have what it needs for fuel, it actually starts to slow the metabolism so it can hold on to body fat so that you can live longer, right? It's like protecting you. It's a protection mechanism. The brain responds. It's when you're on a diet, think about when you're on a diet, that's all you're thinking about. Where's your next meal? How many calories have I had? What am I doing? What's the next thing? Your brain is in overdrive on food and eating. And it's because you're not getting enough. With all of this, we have an increase in cortisol. Cortisol is the stress hormone, fight, flight, freeze. And it signals the body to store fat. It interferes with building muscle. Muscle's active tissue. So this cortisol piece I'm going to touch on, and that I will tell you is probably one of the number one things to address first before we even look at food or exercise, which is very interesting. And then we have a couple of hormones that kind of kick in here, right? Our hunger hormone increases. I need food. It's your body saying, I need food, please feed me. So it increases, it makes you hungrier. Your leptin decreases, and I'll share a study in a minute about this decrease of leptin. So leptin is the fullness hormone, which means if you don't eat all day and you go home and you eat something, the body isn't recognizing it. You won't become full. So that's why you're not full, so you eat again. So you're not full. So you eat again because this leptin is dropped down. So all of these things happen to our body during restriction. This isn't something we can control. So here is a study that was done in 1944 and 45. This, I have to tell you, drives me crazy because if we knew in 1945 that these are the things that happen when we go on a restricted diet, why are we still doing it? Really frustrates me. This particular study would never be allowed today. What I'll share with you is Dr. Keyes this was done in Minnesota. He took 40 men, ages, I want to say 18, I can't remember exactly, 18 to, 25. So they're young men. They did extensive physiological and emotional tests on them to make sure that they were stable and that they were healthy. He sustained body weight for about 3 months, and then he cut their energy intake, which would be their calorie level, in half for 6 months. And then they started to refeed. During the 6 months, first of all, 4 people dropped out, couldn't do it. But during those 6 months, these are the things that they had documented during that time. Decreased metabolic rate, 40%. Increase in depression and emotional distress. So they're isolating, they're pulling away from people, they're getting depressed. So emotionally, this restriction was not only impacting them physically with weight and body, it was also impacting them emotionally. Increased food cravings, increased sensitivity to cold. So they were cold all the time. Social withdrawal and isolation. So that just links with that depression and emotional distress, right? Decline in concentration, lack of focus. One gentleman shut his thumb right in the car door, just, not thinking. Preoccupation with food. They would sit around and talk about recipes. And in the 40s, if you think about teenage men, they're probably, or young adult men, they're not really thinking about food like this. They're not discussing recipes and looking at recipes. They became like, they either ate really fast or they played with their food. They lost the kind of normal eating structure, binging and purging, and reduced sexual interest. So all of these things happened within this 6-month period. And the other interesting thing is, and if you look at that, that's exactly what happens with an eating disorder. If you think about that, right? All of these things come with, or really disordered eating behavior. One of the things to keep in mind too is after this, they started to refeed, but it took up to 2 years for some of them to actually develop a normal relationship with food after this particular study. So this is a study that was done in the 40s that was actually, let's put these people on a diet and document what happens, and then having all of this. This is in the Great Starvation Experiment, I believe, or Starvation Experiment. It's a book. You can take a look at it at some time if you'd like. It's a great study. So let's talk a little bit more. I'm going to give you a little bit more information here. The Biggest Loser study, some of you might have heard of that. It was out probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago now, where they were studying, what they were studying was, why were the contestants gaining weight? And some of you have probably heard this before, but one of the most interesting things that came out of this study was this talk about leptin and leptin levels. When the people started at the ranch, all their leptin levels were normal. But when they left the ranch after their 3-month stint or however long they were there, they had barely any leptin levels at all, which means they were always hungry, right? Because they were never getting full. They didn't have that fullness hormone to connect to the brain to say, hey, I'm getting full. So after, even when they started to gain weight again, their leptin levels restored some, but only to about half of what is normal. And the reason for that is because once these people that worked so hard to lose this weight started to gain weight, they would restrict again. And once they restricted again, the leptin levels dropped again. So it just becomes this loop, right? So with the hormonal piece, cortisol connection to fat storage. And what I like to share about that, if you think about our ancestors in feast and famine, right? So we would go long periods of time without food. You would feast on food, and then you would be going long periods of time without food while you're catching your next meal. So the body developed back then this protection. So the cortisol would increase to slow the metabolism and hold on to fat so that you can survive to the next eating episode, right? This cortisol is high due to stress. When we put ourselves on a diet or restricted food plan, our body is not in homeostasis. It is not getting what it needs. Thus, the cortisol levels, it's an internal, I call it an internal stressor. So it's internal physiological stress because the body isn't getting what it needs. Another type of physiological stress that's internal could be overexercise or overtraining. Because if we're overexercising or overtraining, then we're doing the same thing. We're damaging. We're not in homeostasis. We don't have enough fuel to do the exercise that we're doing. So this cortisol connection is really, really important. And if you think about why, you begin to understand. And the problem is now there's food everywhere. So I will pause at the end for any questions, so you can pop in with some questions if you'd like at the end. Third, inner drive for autonomy. One of my mentors, Elise Reich, who wrote the book Intuitive Eating, says, your inner drive for autonomy will override your desire to lose weight. And I think about, this is when something happens at work, say, or something happens in the family, or there's someone gets sick, or there's a death, there's an external stressor of something that is putting stress on the body. And if you are in a state of restriction, it just doesn't matter. And that's usually where we turn to food, right? Like, don't tell me what to eat. I need something to eat. And that's where we turn to food. So it's this external stressor that kind of pops up. But this internal drive for autonomy, we all have it. Some of us call it that inner child, that inner rebellious child that says, don't tell me what to do. I'm going to do what I want. One of the things that I talk about sometimes is, if you think it's not just food, if someone tells you can't eat something, that's the first thing you want, right? But the other thing is, if someone says, no, you are not allowed to go there, or you're not allowed to see that person, what's the first thing that we think about? Wait a minute, don't tell me, right? I can do what I want. So these are interesting pieces to keep in mind. Yo-yo dieting and restrict binge cycle. Let's move into those for a second. Weight cycling or yo-yo dieting, I'm sure you're familiar with the terms. This is where you go up and down with your weight, right? So you're dieting, you're losing weight loss is happening, external trigger hits, something happens, and you say, I can't do this anymore, or don't tell me what to do, or I need food, or your body starts to tell you it needs food, something happens, and you regain the weight. I'm going to pause for a second and slow down because my brain goes really quickly, as you can see sometimes. Why does the body regain weight so quickly after weight loss? And this is a real link to what we were talking about at the beginning, right? 95% of diets fail. So we have these physiological factors, ghrelin, leptin, and cortisol. But let me just talk a little bit about metabolism, because this is one of the main reasons we gain weight quicker. Metabolism, as we restrict, so as our calorie level drops, so does our metabolism, right? So our calorie and metabolism kind of drop together. And then when we stop a diet, right, we go off of a diet and calorie level goes up, and I call it energy, so energy level goes up. The metabolism doesn't come up to match it right away. Metabolism is still here. Calorie level is still here. This slowly will come up to match it. I hope you can see my hands a little bit, right? So as this slowly comes up to match it, in this space where you're eating more calories and your metabolism is lower, that's where your weight gain happens. And if you've been on multiple restricted plans or dieting, it happens faster. The metabolism actually stays down longer. So that's why weight gain is so quick. And that is why the more diets you go on, the harder it is to lose weight, because your body doesn't know what's going on. It hears, oh, here she goes again. She's starting to restrict. So let's hold on to everything. It's like stop the presses. So the metabolism shuts down, the cortisol spikes high, ghrelin kicks in, leptin drops down. It's almost like they all happen really quickly, especially if the body knows it. Like this has happened before. An analogy that goes with that would be like training for a marathon, right? The first time, say not even a marathon, training for a 5K. The first time you go out running, if you've never gone out running, it's really hard and I can't do this, etc. But each time you go running, your body gets a little bit more used to it. Each time you were to, if you were to try to hula hoop, each time you try, it gets better each time. Your body starts to adapt, right? You start to kind of connect. But physiologically, your body starts to adapt to dieting or restriction, and it tries to protect you. We all have a genetic blueprint, kind of a blueprint of what our body's best weight range is. And it's really not a weight range. It's kind of a fat range, you know, like some people's bodies are going to function better at higher percentages of fat than others. That's just genetic. There's also lifestyle. What kind of lifestyle did you grow up in? Highly active, lots of restriction, lots of different types of food at home. Nobody was really watching. Didn't matter what you ate. A lot of sedentary, like that comes into play here too. So you want to kind of think about all of those things that impact this weight regain and why the dieting piece doesn't work. I hope that made sense. I kind of went off on a tangent a little bit. Impact on your thoughts and your feelings that results in behaviors. So if you go back to the scale, get on the scale, happy, thoughts, feelings, yay, I'm doing something right, resulting in behaviors. Oh, I'm going to go out and celebrate, eat. And then after that, guilt, right, which is decreasing in self-esteem. So this cycle, weight cycle impacts your thoughts and your feelings. And then it also impacts your actions. So this thought process, thoughts result in behaviors and equal low self-esteem. The restrict binge cycle is very similar. Restricting and dieting leads to deprivation and hunger, increased tension, cravings, anxiety, binge, numbness, external trigger usually comes there, right? So something's happened, somebody gets you angry, you get in a car accident, there's something happens in the family, you get in a fight with someone, you know, you flunked a test, any of those kind of things. That's linked to feelings like anger or frustration or overwhelm. Anxiety is a big one there. And when we don't want to feel some of these feelings, sadness, grief, that can be there too. Eating helps. That's where the binge comes in or the overeating comes in, because when we eat, the body goes into rest and digest. It kicks into parasympathetic nervous system. It goes, everything's okay. Everything's okay. So it's short term, but there's a physiological reason why we turn to food. So we turn to food, everything's okay for a little while. But shortly after an eating episode, then there's guilt, shame, self-hatred, this pursuit of the thin ideal, or I have to be a certain way, or then I call that the when I game, right? When I lose the weight, well, then I'll, do that. But this cycle just goes around and around and around and around. But it's the link to this deprivation, body not being the way it should be. I mean, if you think about why people go on diets, why do they go on diets? It's because they want to change their bodies. They want to look a different way. And with society today and everything that's around us, and then it can also be not feeling good in the body. The body's in pain. It could be a lot of different reasons. So we're going to talk about that as well. But these cycles are things to be aware of, especially if they've been going on over and over and over again. So hopefully you kind of got an idea of all the different reasons why the body rebels against restriction and dieting, why 95% of diets fail. And when you think about if 95% of the people that diet regain the weight back, 66% of that 95 gain more. And that's because of the metabolism kickoff, right? And the cortisol level. Both of those things kind of work in conjunction. So the key is looking at intuitive eating. And when I talk about intuitive eating for you, what I want to share is that it's developing and building trust with your own body, starting to listen to what your body has to say. So if you think about trusting hunger and fullness. What is hunger? Where did hunger come from? You know, I think about as babies, we cry and we're either wet or we don't, you know, we have a stomach pain, or we're hungry. We usually get fed sometimes. If you're the person that was taking care of you fed you on every 4 hours, but you had a metabolism where every 3 hours you were hungry, but didn't get fed for that last hour, there's a disconnect in the brain already with hunger. And then I think about the way that we are brought up. And as a toddler, if you're asking for a snack because you're hungry at 5 o'clock and your mom says, you know, wait till dinner, disconnection of hunger. You sit down to the table, and if you grew up in a family where you had to clean your plate, there's you eat till you're full, you stop, but then you're told to clean your plate. So there's a disconnection of fullness. Food has been used as reward, as punishment. You fall and scrape your knee. Oh, here, have an ice cream. If you go to the grocery store today, you know, kids are in the grocery carts eating, you know, Cheerios or whatever it is, a snack. And it's, you know, it's to keep them kind of occupied, right? It's a distraction. Are they hungry? I don't know, possibly, but possibly not as well. So we get this complete disconnect as we grow up with actual hunger. Oh, it's time to eat. I'm feeling hungry. What does that feel like? Somebody asked me, you know, intuitive eating, there can't be no rules to intuitive eating. Like, it doesn't mean you can just eat everything, does it? You know, because sometimes that's what people think is that, oh, well, I just can eat anything intuitively. That means I can eat anything. The key with it is, you know, I would say, okay, well, if there's rules, we never go all or nothing. So the words all or nothing, we take out black and white, we take out that kind of thinking, and we put in mostly and sometimes. So I'm mostly eating when I'm hungry, and I'm mostly stopping when I'm full. That would be the understanding of the rules of this particular piece of intuitive eating. The big piece right above that really is rejecting the diet mentality. Let's just not diet anymore. Done with that, because we know it doesn't work. There's got to be something different. And this is where we turn to begin to trust the body again. Trust your own hunger. What does it feel like? Trust your own fullness. What does that feel like? Where does your body feel comfortable and satisfied with food? The kind of the model we use is about 80% full. That's, you know, and that can be relative to who you are. Some people would rather eat to 70% full. It feels better to them. But we want to try to work in this 70 to 80% of fullness. Understanding the importance of satisfaction. When we talk about the analogy I use here is, if you go to a restaurant and you're looking at the menu, and you see something you really just sounds really good. Oh, that sounds so great. And you can almost feel your mouth watering. And then you think to yourself, oh, I shouldn't eat that. So you see something else that is more of a food that is good, right? Oh, I should get that food. Don't you think about that? I should get that. I really want that. When we turn to the should, a lot of times what will happen is we're not satisfied after we eat it because it wasn't really what we want. And so in turn, later on during the day, we make up for it because we weren't satisfied at that meal. If you choose the thing that you really wanted and you eat it slowly and you enjoy it, you become satisfied. So there's a really important piece to this puzzle of understanding this satisfaction. Are we satisfied with all of our food all the time? No, it's probably impossible. But what we do strive for is that most of the time, the foods that we choose are satisfying to us. Pausing, slowing down, enjoying food, eating when we're hungry, stopping when we're full. and coping with your emotions without food. Emotions drive us to food. And if there's a history of emotion driving you to food, there's a habit that's attached as well, which makes it that much more difficult. And then link in what I was talking about before with the, the emotional or the physiological response when we eat, especially if we eat foods that are higher in sugar or fat or salt. It lights up the centers of the brain and it starts to feel good. Emotions, tired, angry, frustrated, anxious, lonely, sad, right? All of these feelings can turn us towards food. And that's where we want to pause and take a deep breath and say, what else can we, am I hungry is the first question, right? Am I hungry? What does that feel like? So coping with your emotions is understanding the emotion, understanding the need, and then let's try to get that need filled versus filling it with food. And you think about buckets. If we have an emotional bucket, a loneliness bucket or a grief bucket or a sadness bucket, and it's empty, and we turn to food and we fill the food bucket, it works until it doesn't work. So it works for a little while until it doesn't. This need is still empty. How do we fill this need? And that's some of the work that we do with intuitive eating. And then the other piece, this is just there's 10 principles of intuitive eating. One of them is honoring your here and now body. When you think of your own body, I want you to think about your own body as a wonderful gift. It is the vehicle that you live this life in. If it's a wonderful gift, if you received a wonderful gift, you would take care of it. You would wear it if it was a piece of clothing. If it was something to put out, you would put it out, you would dust it, you would take really good care of it. If you get a gift that you don't care for, that you don't really like, or it's not really you, it usually gets regifted, shoved in the back of the closet, given away, sent to Goodwill. It's not taken. We don't really take care of it. We just kind of let it go. If you think about your body and beat yourself up because your body isn't the way you want it to be, it results in usually treating it poorly, whether that's with restriction, over exercise, overeating, binging. So the key here is the more that we can begin to accept and appreciate our own bodies today, our here and now body, the more research we've seen will link to behaviors that support the body, treating the body with kindness, fueling it, moving it, taking care of it, compassion, right? Self-talk with compassion to self as opposed to beating self up. So those are some of the baseline pieces of this intuitive eating. So it's letting the body get in touch with you. But the other thing that I want to talk about here real quickly before I move to the next slide is not only is it the starting to trust your body, it's also the body starting to trust you. Are you really going to continue to feed me what I need? Because it has not had that in the past. So that's why metabolism and hormonal levels and cortisol, like all of those things are kind of out of whack if there's dieting history. So the body has to learn to trust you. That's why this process of learning how to eat intuitively isn't an overnight process. It takes time to master. It takes time to understand. And there's always little pieces and things that you learn as you move through time. You didn't get to the space that you are, where you are today, if you're watching this, by treating the body kindly or listening to the body or trusting the body. It's usually that we're not trusting it, that we're trusting everybody else We're trusting all of the external, but we're not trusting ourselves internally. So that's another link, letting the body start to trust you again. So what you've seen probably on Shaping Perspectives is this is kind of this finally free, fit, and fabulous formula, I call it. So let me explain it a little bit. Finally meaning done. I'm done with what's going on because it's not working. So finally free, like finally let's move into a different position. Free from guilt and shame, free from dieting, free from over-exercising, freedom in the body, right? So free meaning just free of all of the rules and the regulations and all of the things that we think we should do and the shoulds. Fit emotionally fit, spiritually fit, physically fit to do the things that you want to do in your life. So when it comes to fit, it's not, fit being, ready to whatever, run a marathon or compete in an athletic event. It's fitness for you, but it's also fitness of the mind, fitness of the heart, right? Fitness of the connections in your life, creating fitness or fit, being fit in all dimensions, not just financially fit, right? So it's all of those things. And then fabulous, starting to love what is today, being in the moment, finding joy. I think that, finding that inner child, being free with being who you are, spreading your gifts, your talents, the things that you are fabulous at. So that's kind of what this this finally free, fit, and fabulous formula looks like. And when we look at it, you can see, I'm not going to go into the other pieces because we're really talking about the intuitive eating and the dieting, rejecting the diet mentality with this one today, but eating intuitively and intentionally, moving, playing, and exercising with more joy. Not I have to, I should, but I want to. Moving the body. It doesn't matter that it doesn't mean getting out and doing something that's more, I just think gym oriented. We're not talking about that. Move the body, dance, play hopscotch, go to a playground, walk a museum, move the body. Empower your maxi-me. This is that compassionate voice, inner voice, positive inner voice. We know that beating ourselves up, criticism does not lead us to progress, does not lead us to growth. It holds us down and it continues to hold us down. So it's starting to develop a more positive voice. Appreciate and accept your here and now body, and then engage in daily self-care to stress less. We talked about cortisol. If our body is continuously not only having internal stress, but having external stress, we all have external stress. Yet we can help to decrease our stress levels by starting to take care of ourselves. And taking care of ourselves not only by food, movement, oxygen, sleep, connection with others, things like that, but also what fuels you, what brings you joy. How can you reduce your own stress levels? What do you like to do? Is it art? Is it reading? Is it writing? Is it getting out in nature? What are those kind of things? Is it music? What fills your soul? And it's in daily self-care is part of that, lowering your overall stress. Hope everybody's doing okay. So the definition of insanity, doing the same things over and over again and expecting different results, right? So I want you to just kind of pause for a second. If you're doing something and it's not working, if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say joy, finding joy, right? Do you feel like you're always beating yourself up? Are you always looking for the next thing? Just to pause, how is that working for you? With all of the different things that I've done in my career, I see people coming back over and over and over again, or they learn something and they start this wonderful transition, start to build some habits, and then all of a sudden something happens. It's usually a life event, and then old habits just come flooding right back in, and that's one of the things that that breaks my heart, because you have all this wonderful understanding and knowledge, yet without having some sort of a support system or people that can help you along your way, we fall back into old habits because we have pretty strong pathways. They worked for us in the past. When it comes to food, food has worked usually. So I say thank goodness for food sometimes. But when it's not working, we've got to try something else. So I'm going to share a little bit about an opportunity that I have for you that you can take a look at. Think about all the things that we talked about today. Restriction and dieting do not work. Starting to learn to trust your body and let your body trust you is how this works. And what I have created is what I call an SOS, support over struggle community of women that help each other along the journey. This is a place where we move through a journey together and when people hit life stressors, we work with that. We say, okay, what's working, what's not working, how can we continue to make progress without falling straight back into old habits. When we fall, this group is here to pick you back up. So I'm going to share a little bit about this group. The next group, this is a year-long group. I'll tell you that right up front, because the reason for that is that it takes time to move through this process, like I said before. It's live, right? It starts Wednesday night, September 19th at 7, and I'm going to share a little bit about it. I'm not going to take a lot of time. If this is something that's interesting for you, please message me. I'd love to share a little bit more about you, okay? We meet online like this, right? You can see everybody's face, and we go through activities and habits and build all through the 5 steps. So we have a year. There's about 25 calls because it's every other week. And so we move through activities with all the 5 steps: intuitive eating, emotional eating, movement, getting out of pain, self-talk. How do we do that? How do you come back to your body, right? And start to appreciate who you are. They're all recorded. So if you can't make it, you can always jump on in a recording afterwards. You have the recordings for forever, right? These are yours to keep. You can always come back to them. And this program also includes a 1-year program of precision nutrition. This is foundational nutritional information that is intuitive eating based. This is not a diet at all, because why would it be? That's not what we do. This is habit building every single day, 365 days a year. On top of mind, you're understanding nutrition, why certain foods are important, why slowing down is important, what does that do? And it gives you all kinds of information. 24 habits over the course of the year, 2 weeks on each habit to really start to build and train your body, to trust you and for you to trust it. So this is included in this. So between our 2-week calls, you're always working through this. I have 10 Yoga Nidra Stress Less guided meditations online. You'll get access to all of those to help reduce stress. Membership to the Diet Free Sisterhood, where we're right online here on Facebook. And anybody who's worked with me is in this group, and we help each other and support each other. We were just doing that the other day. When things come up and you say you don't have a call for a couple of weeks. And then moving through this, finally, Free, Fit, and Fabulous formula, all of the things that we talked about towards the end. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that because I think it's important. Also, some of the bonuses are our self-talk and are also our drumming. We're going to put in, I have eight drumming sessions that we're going to jump right into this particular program. So We've opened this up. I have 4 spots left. I'm only taking 8, so I have 4 slots left. If this is something that interests you, I would recommend jumping into it pretty quickly, because we're going to be closing this in 9 days. So we'll be closing the session in 9 days. So if you're interested, please, love for you to message me and I'll share more information. There is a landing page, so if you're interested in that, please let me know. And I am going to open this up. I'm going to stop this share. I'm going to open this up to see if anybody has any questions. If anybody has any questions, they can go down to the Q&A and just click a question, and I can answer it for you. I hope that you got something out of today's discussion and talk. It's about 12:48, so we have a couple minutes if anybody has any questions. And if not, that's great. I appreciate you spending some time with me today and learning about some of this. If you have a question that is something that you don't want to, just to post, please feel free to message me. I do this because I don't want others to have to live 40 plus years the way I did. Struggling with my relationship with food and my body, and beating myself up on a daily basis, not only with my mind, but with my body, not treating my body very well at all for way too many years. So I don't see any questions, so I'm going to end the webinar. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. I greatly appreciate it. I hope you learned something or took something away. I'll leave you with this. When you are in the grocery line or watching TV and you see this next best diet that says you're going to lose 10 pounds in 5 days, or this workout that's going to, create the best body, any of those things that we are bombarded with day after day after day, if your mind starts to turn towards it, number one, that's normal. But number 2, pause for a second and think back to the research that I shared with you today. When we put our body in deprivation, it shuts itself down for weight loss. So it's going to protect you. So it's like we're working against a wall. It's that, I feel like, knocking your head against a wall. So just know there is a different way. Start to trust your body. Start to listen to it, okay? Have a fabulous Thursday. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to finish it out. Bye-bye.